Connor McGregor versus Michael Chandler is confirmed, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Kevin Hoop Show. If you guys are new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. But ladies and gentlemen, can we talk about this news with Michael Chandler and Connor McGregor? Come on, just talking about it gets my blood flowing. It's gonna be a banger. Now, I believe on Friday or Thursday of last week, it got confirmed these two are going to be the head coaches on The Ultimate Fighter. And for those of you guys that watched the return of The Ultimate Fighter with Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega, at the end of that season, they ended up having a fight against each other in an actual UFC event. I think it was like UFC 270 something. Could be wrong there with the number, but either way, at the end of this season of The Ultimate Fighter, which begins on May 30th, I believe. May 30th it starts. It ends August 15th. So sometime in August, maybe sometime in September, that is when we're going to see these two fight. Now, if you guys remember a little bit ago, if you guys go back on the channel about a month ago, maybe even like 3 weeks ago, you'll see a little thumbnail video with Connor McGregor and Jon Jones on one side. All right? Now, about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, Jon Jones' fight was confirmed. It's happening in March. Just a little over a month away, may I add, which is going to be very exciting. But I nailed that on the head. I hit that nail on the head. Now we're talking about Connor McGregor coming back in 2023. I hit that nail on the head too. Like, come on. These predictions coming from myself are just absolutely on point. So, again, if you guys are new here, hit that subscribe button. We're always on point with predictions here. Not only predicting what fights are going to happen, but who's winning fights. We're usually on point. I mean, live during one of the watch parties with Glover Teixeira versus Jamal Hill just happened last month. My co-host freaking predicts that Glover Teixeira is going to retire before the fight actually happened. The fight happens and Glover Teixeira retires. Like, it was kind of obvious that it was going to happen, or, you know, the chances of it happening at that event specifically were probably higher than normal, and my fucking co-host predicted it. Like, come on. Just a little pat on the back there for the Kevin Hoop Show. We're fucking doing things great here. Now, to talk about this Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler matchup, may I not remind you that Michael Chandler is ranked number 5 right now in the lightweight division. Now, I think keywords on that is the lightweight division and ranked number 5. So he's pretty high ranked in the lightweight division, but I don't think that this fight is going to happen at light heavyweight. Or not light heavyweight, lightweight, sorry. Mixing up my words a little bit there. But McGregor is obviously looking like he's taking all of the steroids right now, so he definitely looks at least 180, 190 right now. So with a weight cut, he'd probably get down to 170. Maybe he's 170 right now, but if you look at him when he fought Nate Diaz at 170, even Cowboy Cerrone, I do think that dude has put on a lot of muscle. Definitely not like bad weight. It definitely seems like it's all pretty natural, not natural muscle. We can all say that boy is not natty right now. But, you know, I talked about it a little bit on my last video that I did on McGregor. The one that I was talking about, I predicted he was going to come back. But, you know, it's pretty easy to predict that kind of stuff when he's saying that he's going to be back in the USADA test pool in February. It takes 6 months to, you know, for someone to actually be able to fight after they started into the pool of USADA. So 2 + 6 is 8. That brings you to freaking August. Right there. Right there. It was right in front of us. And I saw it. Did you see it? That's the question. Let me know if you guys saw the same thing that I saw, and that's why I made that prediction. It was pretty obvious in my opinion. But you know, maybe I shouldn't reveal all the secrets that I have to these predictions, because, you know, the more I do that, the less you guys want to come back and watch this. So I'll give you some more reasons of, you know, maybe who I think's gonna win this fight and why. But there's still plenty of predictions I have in the books that I think are on point. This being definitely was one of them. Now, I talked about Michael Chandler being ranked in the number 5, we haven't seen Chandler at 170, which is kind of what I was getting into there. I don't know if Michael Chandler is going to be able to still have that same strength at 170 or more or less quickness with strength. Strength. But, Michael Chandler is definitely more of an explosive fighter and likes to end these fights, in the first, second round. So I think that one thing that he's going to be looking forward to is that he is going to have, that strength. He's not going to have to weight cut for this fight. But I think that one of those things that it might do is take away some of his quickness or explosivity, if that's a fucking word. I just don't think that Michael Chandler is going to be moving as fast and be able to move the way he does at 155 when he's fighting at 170. Not to mention that we haven't seen Connor McGregor since about 2022, in the beginning of 2022, though, against Dustin Poirier. Fought Dustin Poirier twice and lost, and with his last fight, Conor McGregor against Dustin Poirier ended up breaking his tibia. Now, I'm no fucking doctor or anything, but I know the tibia is a pretty important ligament or bone or whatever the fuck it is in the body. That's why I'm saying I'm not a doctor. I don't really even know what the tibia is. But when it comes to, hearing the tibia, I know that's something important in the body, especially in the leg. I didn't know that much. If I'm correct, it's somewhere around here, I think. I could be wrong on that. But either way, when Conor McGregor hit that leg shot, his ankle was absolutely fucked in that fight. And I don't know how he's going to recover from that. So on one side of the fight, we don't know how Michael Chandler is going to look at 170. And on the other side, we don't know how McGregor's going to look after this injury. You can look at a lot of guys, Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman, Luke Rockhold. All these guys have gotten similar foot injuries, and them coming back, I don't even think Chris Weidman has came back and fought after that injury yet. It's either him or Luke Rockhold. One of the two hasn't come back and fought since that injury, which means it's a pretty serious injury to deal with. It's not something you want to fuck around with or rush. You see a lot of fighters get an injury and rush back into the ring, and then they make it even worse for themselves in the long run. So that's something that's to look at for Conor McGregor. I don't think he's necessarily rushing this, but I do think that some of that juice he was taking, helped him recover a lot faster and could, help him improve his recovery along the way. Now, I don't think that any of that necessarily is going to have a big impact on him in the fight, just because he does have that 6-month time period of USADA testing where if that bull gets caught, that bull is not fighting in August. So I do think he's going to be clear of that. I do think he's taken all the safety precautions that he needs to. But one thing that I really think that Conor McGregor has in his corner, at least, is he's fought at 170 a good amount of times. He's fought Nate Diaz twice. He's fought Cowboy Cerrone at 170. And I could be wrong here, but maybe one of the two fights, if not maybe both of the fights with Dustin Poirier, were at 170. So he's got some experience at 170 in general right now. So, and not to mention that he's been one to move up weight divisions and look pretty good while moving up weight divisions, which it can be a hard thing to do, especially when you're, in the mix of things, in the, chaos of everything when all of his rise was happening. It's very hard to make that quick change and fight Eddie Alvarez after you just fucking fought Jose Aldo. So I do think that, him being able to do that then doesn't mean he's going to be able to do that now, but I think he's just a more diverse fighter and can fight in multiple different styles, which I'm all down for, baby. It's Conor McGregor. Like, come on, can we just get some hype in the chat? How long have you guys been waiting for a return of Conor McGregor? One stat that I have down here is that this is going to be 10 years in the UFC for him. His UFC debut was back in 2013, and if you guys are living under a rock, it's fucking 2023. The math is easy on that. He's going to be in the UFC for 10 years now, officially. I don't know whether it's on the months, if I'm on dot with that, but either way, 10 years, 9 years, and a few months of change. I do think that it's a little tippable. You got to tip that a little bit. Not only has Conor McGregor changed the sport, he's probably one of the most influential people in the sport of MMA. He's brought a lot of eyeballs to the sport, me being one pair of those eyeballs. And I do think that, he's definitely not paying his dues back. It's not like he owes the UFC anything. But I do think it's a nice relationship. He helped the UFC a lot. Now the UFC is going to keep him in rotation whenever he wants to be, basically. But also just still continuing to help the sport of MMA. He could have easily hung up the gloves and not came back after that Khabib loss. But he's came back. He's fought Cowboy Cerrone. He's fought Dustin Poirier. I do think that, there's a little bit in him. There's something in him that he's got to chase. He's done everything the dude can fucking possibly want. Any guy that is out there and that has desires, he's checked every desire off. He's achieved everything other than maybe becoming a billionaire. But even with that, he's this fucking close. So I do think, with somebody in that position, a lot of people say money changes you. And what they mean by that is you lose interest in what got you all that money. Whether it be boxing, football, basketball, any of these big time sports, after someone starts to really get achievement and get that money, they usually lose passion for the sport. And, whether they focus on family, focus on business, just focus on something else outside of what their passion or what got them to the ring was, when they lose passion in that you really just see them go on a downhill spiral and maybe never come back or just lose their skill the way that they used to have it. Now, I think Conor McGregor was a kind of a part of this, but I think that Conor McGregor is also, a one of a kind type of fighter. We haven't seen anyone like Conor McGregor, and I don't think we're gonna see anybody like Conor McGregor, in the future. And because of that, I do think that he's kind of like a little case study. I do think that him losing passion for fighting was a thing back in 2018. After he had fought Floyd Money Mayweather and survived it, I think he just went over expectations. So with that, not only did he achieve expectations, the dude cashed $100 million off of that fight, basically, as well as launching his whiskey brand, Proper 12, and just a whole bunch of business deals. I see the Black Forage Inn in Ireland is absolutely doing phenomenal. So I'm sure he's doing very well for himself when it comes to money. But in doing all of that, since 2017, 2018, and I think a lot of people in 2020, me myself, kind of had a long look at yourself. You sat back, you took a little third person point of view at yourself and said, where am I in life right now and where do I want to be? What are the things that I like right now? What are the things I want to chase? And with that, with Conor McGregor having that in 2020 and maybe leading up to that with 2017 and 2018 being really big years for him, I do think that he lost that passion leading up to 2020, 2021. But in 2022 and 2023, I think something snapped. I think there's something that switched in him. There's something that, changed in that kind of, I'm not all about fighting anymore. I'm all about the money. I think that mentality right there completely changed in 2021, 2022. I could be speaking completely out of pocket right now, but in my opinion, if you put yourself in those shoes, you're still in the prime age of your life. And your legacy is still over. He showed that he can come back and beat Cowboy Cerrone in 2021. Now, whether that gave him all the confidence of the world or just maybe a little bit of confidence that he can come back and do this, I do think that he kind of rushed things a little bit with Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier was not the same guy you fought back in 2015, 2014. Dustin Poirier was a fucking killer in 2020 plus, basically. Even a little bit before that. And, I think that with that, there's something that changed on that money mentality thing where he found his passion for fighting again. He found that he's going to cement his legacy as one of the greats to do this sport. Now, whatever great means to him might mean something different to me. So I do think that, he's going to come back and maybe not chasing the title, maybe right away, but he's going to come back for a reason and come back with a passion, in my opinion. So there's no counting Connor McGregor out. Yeah, you can look at the 2 losses with Dustin Poirier. I mean, hey, Michael Chandler's lost to Dustin Poirier as well, so it's not that big of a fight. Just want to check Michael Chandler here real quick and make sure I was speaking on the right thing. Yeah, all right. So his last fight was against Dustin Poirier and he lost. So I was right again. You know what can I say? I'm just usually fucking right. Um, just talking about recent things with Michael Chandler. He has 3 losses in the UFC and 2 wins recently. Obviously, one of those losses being Dustin Poirier. Basically, the only 2 wins he has is Tony Ferguson and Dan Hooker. And I'm not over here calling Michael Chandler, fake or anything or an imposter. But I do think that he came over to the UFC a little bit with, 2 wins that, a win over Dan Hooker. He hasn't been looking that good recently, especially when Michael Chandler fought him. So that fight didn't really impress me that much. And honestly, the fight against Tony Ferguson, I don't know if that was a last-minute change or not. I don't think it was, but I could be misspeaking because I know Tony Ferguson usually gets the short hand of the stick a lot of the time. But either way, the knockout that Michael Chandler had against Tony Ferguson was picture fucking perfect with that fucking high kick right to the fucking chin. Like, you guys should Google that right now if you haven't seen it. It's an absolutely amazing knockout. Pretty brutal, to be honest, but Tony Ferguson in general wasn't looking like the best guy in general leading up to that fight. Ever since he lost to Khabib, or not, was it? No. After he lost to Justin Gaethje, see, that's where people are getting mixed up with Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson was the fucking boogeyman of this division leading up to 2020. Obviously, Khabib fought McGregor in 2018, and after that, it wasn't looking like he was going to fight again, and it ended up happening that he was scheduled to fight Tony Ferguson. Then his father passed away, I believe, or he got sick, one of the two, and the fight just didn't happen, and Justin Gaethje got subbed in. Now, with that, Tony Ferguson, in my opinion, was getting ready for the best grappler in the fucking world. And then going out and fighting Justin Gaethje, who's one of the best strikers in the division, is a big fucking flip. So that's where I think Tony Ferguson wasn't really ready for that. And that fight itself completely fucked Tony Ferguson for the rest of his fights. I don't know if he lost confidence. I don't know if he got hit in the head too much. I don't know if he lost passion. But the dude has not looked the same since then. He might have gotten a win or 2 since then, but either way, in my opinion, Tony Ferguson was the baddest guy in this division other than Khabib back in 2018, and he just hasn't gotten his dues. One other thing I want to mention is Tony Ferguson, I think, was possibly supposed to be the coach of one of these, either McGregor or Chandler. I don't know who the hell got the short end of the stick. If it was Tony Ferguson, which he usually does get, I feel a little bad for him because he was talking about this being the Ultimate Fighter with Conor McGregor and himself. So if something like that happened, then he got duped instead for Michael Chandler. I feel bad for the guy, honestly. The dude's constantly gotten the short end of the stick in this business, and I really would like to see him have some sort of wins in the UFC, whether it's him being on the Ultimate Fighter, him being on the color commentating desk. Either way, I do hope that he has some success or finds something to do in the business, because I'm a big fan of El Kakui. All right. If you guys don't know what the fuck that is, go and look it up, because you just don't know the UFC then. All right? What else haven't I hit about this? Obviously, Michael Chandler. I talked about he hasn't impressed me that much. He has and he hasn't. In my opinion, he's just been throwing all of these super hard fights, and he didn't really deserve the super hard fights. He didn't deserve these top 5 guys when he's coming over from Bellator, and a lot of people that come over from Bellator get these super high-ranked fights. And in my opinion, they usually don't go out too well. Just look at Ben Askren, ladies and gentlemen. Just look at that. Boom, bit. Answers my question right there. Again, the fight against Tony Ferguson, in my opinion, if it was back in 2018, maybe even 2017, that would have impressed me a lot. But the dude hasn't won against Dustin Poirier. He didn't beat Charles Oliveira. What was the other loss he had? Justin Gaethje. Again, Justin Gaethje, a top guy. If he beat Justin Gaethje and Tony Ferguson lost against Justin Gaethje, they're around the same type of competitor then, in my opinion. But Michael Chandler does not have that top 5 type of capability. And in my opinion, beating Connor McGregor, who nobody knows where he would be in the rankings, it's just like, dude, you're going to lose your top 5 rank, or you should lose it, and you're holding all these other guys back in this absolutely killer of a division. Anybody in the lightweight division right now is an absolute fucking killer. And in my opinion, this fight is not only holding up the division for a long period of time, from May to August, which is a solid 4 to 5 months, and then you're going to fight, and then after that fight, you're still going to be ranked number 5? 5? After not fighting at all and losing to Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje? Come on now. And I don't even think Tony Ferguson at the time when he fought him was in the top 5. Like, come on. To me, it just doesn't make any fucking sense. I'm a big fan of Michael Chandler in general. He definitely delivers exciting fights. Don't get me wrong. The knockout against Tony Ferguson was, again, picture perfect. The fight with Dustin Poirier, yes, it was exciting. But again, Michael Chandler comes out super explosive. The dude empties his gas tank within the fucking second round. The Dustin Poirier fight, he lost in the third. The dude goes all out in the first round and then has nothing to say after that. And in my opinion, in the UFC, that's not the way to fight, dude. It's just not. It's not going to get you far. Yeah, you've had 5 fights in the UFC, and now you're fighting the most entertaining fighter there is to fight in the UFC. But what are you going to do after that? What's there to do after that? Connor McGregor is the one that brings pay-per-view buys, not Michael Chandler. And yes, you might have been building a name a little bit, but in my opinion, who I want to see fight is fucking winners. And to me, Michael Chandler is not the best winner in this organization. That's just how I'm going to put it. Straightforward, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Chandler, yes, he's made it a little far in the UFC right now. 5 fights. Super exciting. But what's going to happen after this Conor McGregor fight? Because in my opinion, it's not going to be a top 5 guy. And if it's not a top 5 guy, you're going to get replaced. Plain and fucking simple. Moving on. Gotta go back to my freaking dock so I can actually move on. Now, just one other thing to mention before I go on. I said moving on, but I'm not going to move on quite yet. I do think that one of the reasons Chandler got this is because he's been calling out Conor McGregor like he's his freaking mommy. Or daddy, really. The dude has constantly been calling out McGregor after every fight. And in press conferences as well. Also interviews as well. So, again, eventually you're going to get it if you're showing exciting fights and you're bringing in pay-per-view buys. In my opinion, with that Dustin Poirier one and the Justin Gaethje one, I would have bought the fight either way if Michael Chandler was the opponent of either of those two guys or not. But that's just me. I do think that, Michael Chandler does have 2... Oh, no, it's McGregor. Never mind. I do think the two fights with McGregor, though, are something to talk about a little bit, The first one more or less than the second one. But even if you look at the first one, I think that the first one got ended a lot sooner than the second one. Recap, blah, blah, blah. Bada bing. Bada boom. Alright, so no, the first one did go longer. The second one was ended in the first round. But, it doesn't really say much, honestly. It doesn't say much. Conor McGregor coming out in the first one and going a little longer. I could give that to some ring rust. Maybe he wasn't feeling like himself. And as for the second one, obviously the tibia injury. I think the biggest thing in this whole entire Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor thing that everyone's going to be asking is how is Conor McGregor's leg going to look in this fight? And how much is Michael Chandler going to focus on that in the fight? It's going to be very interesting to see, and I cannot wait to see it. Moving on, actually now, though, we're talking about UFC 284, ladies and gentlemen. It's Monday as I'm recording this and as I'm uploading this. So if you guys are watching this as it uploaded or the day after, it's 4 to 5 days away right now. So nothing but excitement coming up for this Saturday for UFC 284. I've been talking about it for probably the past 3 months now since it actually got confirmed. We're talking Alexander Volkanovski versus Islam Makhachev. These guys are two of the best fighters in their division right now and two of the best fighters in the UFC. Pound for pound number 1, we've got Alexander Volkanovski. Pound for pound number 2, we've got Islam Makhachev. So this is literally a fight between two different divisions fighting for the number 1 pound for pound in the entire organization. Now, just looking at it statistically wise and looking at things on paper, obviously the guy with the, higher weight or that's used to fighting at the higher weight is going to have somewhat of an advantage, that being Islam Makhachev. Now, I don't know whether Alexander Volkanovski is going to have the best, adjustment at 155, but I do know that he is putting on a good amount of muscle for this fight. He's been eating steaks on steaks on steaks, so he's definitely getting all that protein in to get those muscles up. So shout out to all the steaks out there that everybody's eating. But one thing that I think is really important to think about is how Alexander Volkanovski is going to answer the takedown game. Obviously, Islam Makhachev is going to try and take him to the ground at some point. Islam Makhachev is someone, though, coming out of Dagestan, who has obviously great wrestling, but also has that striking. I wouldn't say he's, extremely better than Khabib, but I do think that his striking is a lot more diversified than Khabib's was. I do think it is better. I'm not going to say it's 10 million times better than Khabib's was, but I do think it's, 10 times, 5 times better. He's definitely got the openings and the counters there. So how he does that against Alexander Volkanovski, who's showed a lot of good striking in his most recent fights, not even in his most recent fights, in the fights against Max Holloway in particular. Max Holloway is known as the best boxer in the UFC. Or having the best boxing style and throwing hands with someone. He has great output, he has great accuracy, and, you can't really ask for anything better than that. And maybe you could say dodging and, avoiding defense, basically avoiding shots. So when it comes to that, and you're able to make Max Holloway look like a child in there, I do think that that's something to say with your striking. I think Alexander Volkanovski has some of the best striking in his division and maybe in the whole UFC. And that's someone who really doesn't have that, I forget. It's something Whitman or not Whitaker. I want to say John Whitman is Trevor Whitman. Bada bing, bada boom. Trevor Whitman, Justin Gaethje's coach. Other than Trevor Whitman and guys coming out of his camp, I'd say Alexander Volkanovski is right up there with those guys in striking. Because right now, in my opinion, in the whole entire UFC, guys coming out of Trevor Whitman's camps are having phenomenal striking. Just look at Kamaru Usman, Justin Gaethje, Rose Namajunas. All of those guys, when it comes to striking on the feet, is absolutely fucking 10 out of 10 perfection. So other than those three, I do think Alexander Volkanovski is, fourth, if not somewhere tied to be 1, 2, 3 in striking on the feet. Not to mention he showed good top control. I don't want to necessarily say he showed good grappling. If you look at the Brian Ortega fight, I think it was, he probably could have mistakenly got into that position when Brian Ortega had him in that rear naked choke or guillotine. I forget which one of the two it was. It might have been a triangle choke, honestly. That fight was a little bit ago, back in August of last year. Pretty exciting fight, though. If you look at all the guys that Alexander Volkanovski's taken out in the flyweight division, I think 145. Whether that, I believe it's flyweight. His feather is below that. So when it comes to all the guys that Alexander Volkanovski's taken out in the 145 division, you've got guys like. Wait, is it 140? Yeah, it's definitely 145. You know what? I'm starting to double guess myself now. I'm starting to do it. I'm starting to double guess myself. Rankings. Featherweight. All right. So I was just getting mixed up with featherweight and bantamweight there. Sorry about that, ladies and gents. But 145, we've got. Actually, let me go back to that. Max Holloway, Brian Ortega, Josh Emmett, who's the Korean Zombie. Like, these guys are no joke. And not Max Holloway. Alexander Volkanovski has taken all of these guys out, in my opinion, with somewhat ease. Like, he's made it look kind of easy. So, in doing that, I just have to say, like, you cannot count this guy out. As good as Islam Makhachev looks, and let's be real here, the majority of people are voting Islam Makhachev to win this fight. Look at the odds. I mean, I haven't looked at the odds at all for this fight, but honestly, I believe that Islam Makhachev has the majority the decision in this fight. He's got a lot of people thinking that he's going to win just by looking at, things on paper. Now, whether Alexander Volkanovski is speaking the truth when he talks about his stand-up and, he's not going to be able to, or he's going to be able to stand up against Islam Makhachev if he gets taken down. If he does that, I'm going fucking crazy. I'll just say that right now. If Alexander Volkanovski gets taken down and stands up, the fight's over. I'm calling it now. Islam Makhachev isn't gonna know what to do if Alexander Volkanovski stands up. That's Islam Makhachev's number one move. Takedown, smash, takedown or smash. Either one, he's gonna try and do that in this fight. And if he does it, and Alexander Volkanovski stands up, I'm telling you, it's going to be a mind fuck. Not only has Islam Makhachev not experienced that, but if he experiences that in a fight, actually in the ring, in the octagon live, I don't think he's going to know what to do. I think he's going to scramble. I think he's going to try and go into Alexander Volkanovski's fight plan, which is get taken down, stand up, and stay on the feet then. And if he does that, if Islam Makhachev falls into that trap, he's done. He's done. Just look at Max Holloway after he was on the feet for 5 rounds with Alexander Volkanovski. The dude looked like a fucking zombie. And if you look at the Korean Zombie, that dude looked like a zombie too after fighting Alexander Volkanovski. So, in my opinion, I don't see how people are underestimating Alexander Volkanovski the way they fucking are. I see comments left and right. Islam this, Islam that. Islam's going to smash him. Islam's going to take him down in the first round and it's not going to go past that. Bull fucking shit. I'm not saying Alexander Volkanovski is going to come out and destroy this dude, but it's going to be a fucking war. It's going to be a battle to the death. And let me tell you, it's going to be a lot better of a battle if Islam Makhachev cannot take Alexander Volkanovski down. Just saying. It's going to be a hell of a battle if Alexander Volkanovski has great takedown defense. And my boy Craig Jones is over there in that corner right now going over all different sorts of positions. I can just promise you that. Alright, I feel like I'm fucking Obi-Wan Kenobi. These are not the troops you are looking for. These are not the droids you are looking for. Shout out to Star Wars, though. Really big segue there. What the fuck? But either way, getting back into UFC 284, that's my somewhat, little breakdown of the fight for Alexander Volkanovski versus Islam Makhachev. Um, and I mean, that's the big fight. That's what everyone's focused on. I do want to shine some light on these other fights, though. These other fights, everyone's usually always excited for the main event, the last fight of the night. And I think sometimes with such a big card like this, and big card being the main event, the last fight is super big. You have two champions going at it, and champions that, at least for Volk's situation, he's looked like he's been the best for the past 3 years in this division. You usually don't see that a lot, so hats off to him. But to shine some light on these other fights, which I didn't even really know that this was the co-main event until this upcoming week for it. Yair Rodriguez versus Josh Emmett. Big fucking fight for the flyweight division. 145, these guys fighting, and Josh Emmett being ranked number 5, and Yair Rodriguez being ranked number 2. I think that this is an easy number 1 contender fight. If not, they're going to fight Max Holloway, who's currently ranked number 1 in this division. And either they're going to fight Max Holloway, and then the winner of that faces Volk, or after this fight, the winner of this fight, Yair versus Josh, is going to then face Volk, Alexander Volk, to be more specific. I almost said Alexander. I almost butchered that, but either way. I do think that this fight has some excitement to bring. Josh Emmett has been looking phenomenal in this weight division. He looks like a big guy in general. I think he could fight at 155. He might have before. But either way, I do think that he's got somewhat of a come-up story in this division. And whether he takes out Yair Rodriguez and makes that title shot run, I think it would be exciting. But that's nothing to take off from Yair Rodriguez. He's been looking phenomenal in this division as well. Hasn't fought for the title yet. At least hasn't fought Alexander Volkanovski yet. So, I think both of these guys could bring a really exciting title fight when it happens. Now, obviously, this fight's happening in February, so maybe in the summertime we might see Volk fight again for the title at 145. To clear things up, the 155 match versus Islam versus Volk is only for the 155-pound belt. Both belts are not on the line. This is strictly for a pound-for-pound number 1 to see if Alexander Volkanovski can achieve the status of double champ. Now, to kind of circle back real quick to that, there's only been 4 people in UFC history to achieve that status of double champ. Daniel Cormier, well, if we're going to do it, we should do it the right way and do it all in order. We've got Connor McGregor, the first to do it, the biggest name there is in the UFC. He did it, and guess what? He's coming back. Then we have, now this is where the timeline might get a little skewed, but I want to say it was Henry Cejudo. I could be wrong there, guys. I could be wrong. But if not, it was Amanda Nunes to do it third or second. And after that, it was Daniel Cormier, the last double champ we've seen. So whether Alexander Volkanovski makes it to be the 5th name on that list, it's a very short list for a reason. And that reason being it's hard to achieve that status in 2 different weight divisions. There's killers in both, and once you get that title, you kind of have to defend it for a little bit. And Alexander Volkanovski has defended it, and he's taken his lumps. He's got, maybe an injury or 2 from all that. Definitely gained a lot of experience, so I think that is something that he has as an advantage. But I do think that the task of achieving that status is a lot harder than people think. Just look at Israel Adesanya versus Jan Blachowicz. Israel Adesanya went up in weight, didn't really go up in weight by that much. He didn't even hit 205, and got absolutely destroyed in that fight. So it's definitely not as easy as you would think. I'm hoping Alexander Volkanovski weighs in at 155 and then comes into the octagon at like 160, 170. Probably the same that Islam's going to be, but That's just me in the corner if I were to be in the corner. Luckily, I'm not, because I should not be in that fucking corner. To go back to these fights, though, we've got Jimmy Crute also fighting in this card. He is an exciting fighter that I've seen before fight. I know he's got some losses on his record, but he's in Australia right now, and that's where the fight is. It's happening in Perth, so I think that he might have some of that home court advantage. One thing that I want to mention about the Brazil card is when that Brazil card happened, there was obviously a lot of Brazilian fighters fighting on that card. 8 of the 15 fights that happened, and about all 15 had a Brazilian fighter in it, including the main event with Glover Teixeira and Jamal Hill. 8 of those 15 guys ended up winning their fight. Now, obviously, if they're fighting in every single one, they should have hopefully 50% win rate, but that is a little bit over 50%. So just something to say about this Australia fight in Perth. A lot of Australians are fighting on this card, so whether it's a very Australian favored card for wins, I think that's something to look at. It might be something for you bettors out there. Might be another reason you put an extra $5 on Alexander Volkanovski. I'm just saying, all right? Just saying. But also, maybe that puts on a lot of pressure for that person fighting at home. You could look at Glover Teixeira was fighting in Brazil in his home country and ended up losing. The same thing could happen for Alexander Volkanovski. The same thing could happen. I don't think it is, but it could happen. It's not that I don't think it is. I just am not underestimating Volk as much as other people. Other people are acting like this is going to be a cakewalk for Islam Makhachev. Look at Alexander Volkanovski's record. Look at Alexander Volkanovski's reputation in the UFC. Look at the guys he's taken out. Look how long he's held this title. It's not an easy thing to do that anymore in this era of the UFC. This is not an Anderson Silva GSP era anymore. This is, you have the belt, you better hold on to that thing as long as possible, because chances are you're going to lose it within a year to 2 fucking years. Look at Israel Adesanya. Look at Kamaru Usman. Maybe that estimate was a little lower, but either way, in my opinion, those guys only held the belt for 3 to 4 years, maybe not 4, more or less 2 to 3. And once that happened, it's really questionable to see if they're going to be able to retain that belt again. Obviously, in both of those fights, they were winning the fight leading up to it. But you never know what could happen in a rematch. You never know what could happen. Just look at all of Israel Adesanya's rematches with Alex Pereira. You never know what could happen in a rematch. So, I really just want to put that out there. I do not think that it's a smart thing to underestimate Alexander Volkanovski. And in my opinion, it's one of the stupidest things you could fucking do right now as a spectator. I think if anything, this is going to be a very close fight. The chances of this fight going 5 rounds, to me, is pretty fucking high. If I were to bet over-under on this going past 3 rounds, I'm betting over on 3 rounds. And I think I'm going to bet on that on Friday. So tune in on Friday for live bets. We're doing live bets this Friday. I've wanted to do that for a little bit now. We're not sponsored by any organization or business that does gambling or sports betting. So if there's any small gambling sites that want to pick up the Kevin Hoop Show and sponsor us, feel free, but I highly doubt that's going to happen anytime soon. If you guys want to hit that subscribe button and maybe fast track us on that direction, please feel free. But that's kind of all I really had. I have a little bit more to mention on this, but not too much. There's obviously the 8 out of 15 fights that happen in Brazil. Makhachev versus Volk is going to be a banger. Again, I just think, in my opinion, a lot of people are underestimating Volk. I really think it could go either way. I think with this fight in particular, there's a reason both of these guys are champs, and there's a reason this fight is happening. And I think that reason is we're going to get a really good fight. Possibly one of the best fights in 2023, and it's only February. Like, just look at that realistically. Last thing I'll mention is we haven't seen Alexander Volkanovski at 155 pounds. One thing he mentioned that they actually showed on the countdown was his rugby experience. His past in rugby. He did used to play professional rugby, or at least in a rugby league in Australia. And it's obviously a way bigger sport over on that side of the world than it is over here, especially in the UK. So I do think that's one thing to think about when it comes to him being a bigger person. He used to, himself, he said he used to weigh 200 plus pounds. And just seeing some of the videos of him actually running through 2-3 guys like a fucking football game and plowing through his little ass self through bigger guys than him, I think that goes to show something. I need a fucking tissue. Oh my god. I need a tissue or something. Holy shit. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen, but there's something in my nose right now that's just like preventing me from breathing almost and making me fucking feel annoying whenever I'm talking. Either way, though, rugby, I do think it has a little bit to say, not a whole bunch to say for Alexander Volkanovski, but I do think that those clips are something funny to look at the least. So if you guys want to go and look at those clips, feel free. But that is my kind of UFC 280 breakdown and predictions. Not my predictions. My predictions are going to be coming out on Friday along with the bets. So tune in for Friday, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to do a whole UFC 280 card, 284 card breakdown this Wednesday. So tune in for that video. We're also doing a watch party. That is right. Saturday night, we are going to be going live for this whole entire main event from the start to the beginning. Starting with Jimmy Crute, which is going to be a big opening fight. So for that fight, that's when we're going to start going live. Tune in. We're going to watch the fights, break them down. You guys can watch along with us, make some bets as well. Feel free to join in. Don't forget, if you guys are new here, hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Let me know who you guys think is going to win this Islam versus Volk fight, as well as let me know your thoughts on Connor McGregor's return. It's very exciting to happen, and for me to actually predict that, I think it was a little pat on the back for me, and obviously tippable that I'm making the absolutely best predictions out here in the MMA community. But either way, what can I say? I'll continue to do it. Have a great one, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great one. Woo!